Well, let's get more on this and the rest of another tumultuous week in the White House. We're joined by former White House staffer for both Republican and Democrat presidents, Professor Ed Blakely. Ed, welcome.
Welcome. I think there's a desk available for me in the White House. It must be a sea of empty desks.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, of course, you are referring to Steve Bannon having...
Most recent.
That's the most recent
he has now disappeared from the scene. Well, maybe that's an exaggeration because he'll still be
aside,
around, won't he? Maybe he'll be agitating more now he's outside of the White House. What do you think?
Well, that's a very dangerous thing. Him outside or him inside. Inside, you can put a rein on him. But outside, they declared war on Saturday. Breitbart did. So the president has lost the Republican Party. Almost every Republican, including some that are pretty racist, have stepped away from him because of the Nazi issue and Jew issue. And Ivanka Trump is an Orthodox Jew, Jared Kushner. So people are stepping away who should be on his side, and now the people he doesn't need on his side are stepping away or attacking him. This is an isolation I have never seen before.
So what do you think will be the ultimate consequence of Steve Bannon in particular? Because he is a chief strategist. He was very central to President Trump's election campaign. What might he know? Do you believe that he would have an agenda against President Trump?
Well, I think there's several things that's going to happen. He's going back to Breitbart. So he's going to give a direct message to the president, challenge him to stay on course, meaning support us, don't let any statues come down, argue on our side. If the president doesn't go that far, he's going to suggest we're going to run candidates in those electoral districts that you need in 2018. Breitbart is a very effective vehicle for them. Now, by running these candidates, they give the Democrats a big upper hand because there'll be two candidates on the Republican side or the right side and one on the Democratic side. So a weak Democratic candidate might win the election, and that's exactly what they want. They'll turn the House and the Senate around, and the Senate's easy to turn around at this point. So there's a possibility the Democrats could be in charge of one or both houses.
Wow.
Let's look at what happened as far as the violence is concerned, which we just saw that from John Barron, that piece. Some dark days there in America, rekindling what we've seen in years past. How concerned are you?
I'm very concerned. And the reason for this is there is now someone in the White House who, unlike Obama, unlike the Bushes, unlike anyone we've known before, is saying, I don't know if these are bad guys. He said that outright. There's some good people in this movement. That gives them courage. They're going to take some actions. They've been on the defensive with the statues. They're going to go on the offensive. And what will the offensive look like? It's really a scary moment for America.
You're saying this is a critical moment when you need strong leadership and it's lacking?
Yes, but it's strong leadership that starts at the top and moves across the board. I remember the days when Johnson said, no more. And all of a sudden, people had to step back. So that kind of strong leadership is required to keep the national direction. There's a great book called The Rendezvous with Destiny. And it talks about what we're thinking about here in Australia. That no matter what your color is, no matter what your point of origin is, you have the right citizenship, you can rise to the top. These people are saying quite the opposite. That they want to restore rights they had before 1962, which meant a black person couldn't even drink from a fountain in a southern town. And I was in those southern towns. So this is something alive in the memory of many Americans. And they're going to take action on one side or the other.
So will we find leadership from elsewhere? Will we find it perhaps, say, from the Vice President? Or even, I've been hearing comments coming from Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was formerly the Republican governor of California.
I'm glad you brought up the Vice President. Interestingly enough, it looks like we have an alternate president. What's he doing? Taking trips to South America, easing international relations. He just fired his chief of staff and brought in someone else who's a great campaign manager. He's altered his staff, so he's looking more and more presidential. The words out of his mouth after the end of that crisis were quite genuine, quite direct. I detest all bigotry, all violence against all persons, and people who commit this in the name of white supremacy, I really condemn. He never even reached to the other side because he thought their rights were being protected. So Pence is looking presidential, and there's a lot of reinforcement coming from the party. The party is talking about a new health care bill with Pence, not with the president. So remember, some weeks ago I talked about the triumvirate.
But are you expecting, we've spoken about this before, Ed, that perhaps President Trump won't last his first term. Are you perhaps being more realistic in saying he will, but come the next election, it'll be Pence that does the running?
Well, I'm saying two things. One of them is maybe Pence starts taking over, on training wheels, taking over more of the action.
A de facto president, in a way.
A de facto president. And Trump stays in the job, but he's locked up. Think of this. Kelly has basically taken all of his toys away. Tillerton's coming back, strengthening his position. So Kelly has done everything but take his tweeter away from him. Remove Bannon's. When you remove Bannon, you move 5 or 6 people in that office. So it looks like the president is being gradually encircled and will not be able to carry out the normal functions, certainly with the Congress.
What of Donald Trump's agenda that he trumpeted during the election, which was largely driven by Steve Bannon?
Well, that agenda is going to be picked up by Michael Pence. And that agenda will be slightly altered so he can keep some of those people on side, but bring a larger group of people on side. He is very shrewd at this moment. And he's saying all the right things. He hasn't said anything against gays or lesbians or any of that, even though that's his territory. He's been very careful to stay within the law. And Mr. Sessions is becoming strong again. So I think Pence and Sessions and the others are thinking about, let's run the country, dismiss this guy, and it's beginning to happen.
And we also have that grand jury as well.
Well, think of the grand jury here. Trump Jr. is going to have to walk into a room with 23 people with no lawyers. And they'll ask him the story, what happened in these things, and then they'll start the other side. Now, you said this. Let's start at the end of this story. All of a sudden, you can't remember. You look like a liar. Boom, 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 boom. When you're without a lawyer in front of people like that, and in front of someone like Mueller, you're in deep trouble. So I think even the president's own people are stepping away because they're in legal trouble, deep trouble. So I think over the next year, Mueller is going to be our story.
Ed, always good to get your view from Washington. Professor Ed Blakely, thanks very much.
Thank you for having me.